Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour is general discussion about things that anybody asks about media, virtual production, or anybody in Mukana. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we have the education hour, which is the 2 hours after this hour. And then we don't put those on YouTube. And then we're going to come back at 10 and we're going to talk a little bit about Keynote and just some of it's going to be a very early tips and tricks of just what we use it for. I'll show some of the things that I use it for and some of the key features that I think are important that I use a lot. And then we'll also get other input from other folks to talk about that. So that'll be at 10 o'clock. And then, tomorrow we have general discussion and cooking at 10 o'clock. So we'll be, Damayanti Gajar's back and we'll be cooking with her tomorrow. And so we're looking forward to that. And now I'm going to hand it off to the host, Emily Russo. Hey, Emily.
Hey, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Excited to talk today. We got a lot of questions, but just a reminder, if you do have a question, put it into Mukana and vote on those questions so we know which order to answer them. And let's go ahead and hit that first question.
First question, top of the deck, is Guy Cochran from Seattle, USA. If I was a Mac guy and wanted to learn vMix, how could I run it on my Mac?
Anybody?
I'm assuming that Guy is sending that. Throw it. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry, Alex. I jumped in with no.
Go ahead. You're first, Alex.
It's been a couple weeks.
I know.
So anyway, I think that you need to use Parsec and AWS would probably be the way to do that.
Mark?
Another way to do it is if you have an Intel-based Mac using VMware or Parallels. I understand Parallels has come out with a way to run Windows on the M1, but it's running the ARM version of Windows, which I'm not sure you can license yet.
Jonas?
I think the Macs are selling pretty good, even used. I would just sell it and buy a Windows PC if you want to use it for vMix.
Alrighty. Next question.
And it comes from Todd Reynolds from North Adams, Massachusetts. I want to hear about Jeffrey Powers' experience at CES.
Oh, Jeffrey, let's hear.
So do I. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. It was I survived, yes. So basically got there on Sunday. Lots of plane delays. So that was the first thing. A lot of people. One factor that I didn't put into play for attendance was people getting their flights canceled, which ultimately canceled them overall. I had a friend that had they were supposed to be displaying. They were actually going to be displaying in another booth, so they were kind of tagged onto there. And then the overall booth, they decided to cancel their event. So then she was trying to figure out how she can show off their product since they don't have a booth anymore, and then their flight got canceled. So that worked out that way. There were a lot of people in attendance still. The Central, North, and Venetian and Tech West, the new Tech West, which is the new building across the street from the convention center. It was all they had pretty good amount of booths there, and I got a lot of content. Definitely there. The press conferences started out where the first three were virtual, so you didn't attend. But then Canon had their press conference, and from there on it was all attended and relatively well attended. We're all wearing masks. We were all fully vaccinated. So the first one was Canon, and I'll show you a couple things here. Canon's new PTZ with their AMLOS system. So it's a nice little PTZ camera that goes up to 4K, and you can hook it up in many different ways, from HDMI to SDI to USB, and they will have an NDI version as well. And then of course I got to see their 3D Scopic 180 camera system that runs on the EOS. Starts with an R. I can't think of the camera. You need a specific Canon camera to run this lens off of. But it does a stereoscopic. You can see it in the viewfinder as a stereoscopic, and of course you can also switch to the one lens, which is your focus lens, and then switch back and forth between the lenses to make sure that you're online properly. I got a full interview with them on that. The next thing that of our interest was this really cool robotic tripod mover. It's actually two parts. So you have the tripod there, and then up on top they have the robotic PT head, and the name of the brand of the company escapes me right now, but I've been seeing a lot of ads for them. This one wasn't a working model, so I don't have any video on that, but as in working, but I did do some video with all the specs on there. Another thing, lots of gaming desks, but they are also full production desks. This was the 3D desk, which goes up to 7 feet high, and as you can see, had all the lights, all the cameras, all the microphones, and there's a little table underneath those 3 monitors. That table actually slides up, so you can have it in more of a 45-degree position down to a flat position. They're fully automated, just amazing right there. A couple more items really quick. Me being the 3D printer guy, I was really geeking out over at the Creality booth. They had 4 new 3D printers. This is their belt-driven one, so you can mass produce a lot of cool stuff for whatever. And then this 2 more things concept. This is from Ready. This is a make your own type computer type thing. He did it for amateur radio, but it's built for many different things. I was thinking of Preto's rocket project and how that could actually play into there, because they could build a system that would work perfect for that. And then one more thing, this is a VR style monitor. So you have a hood there, you could look right in, and it looks really nice. This is in prototype. They're looking for distributors so they can actually bring it down. So because it's like $70,000 to make this monitor right now, but they want to get it down to about the $2,500 mark. So a lot of other cool stuff there, and just a lot of great stuff. I did see the BMW changing car, which was great, and I did see the let's see what else. Some of the tech. Still went to the Samsung booth and checked out their new ecosystem for their lineup, the Z series, the Fold series, and stuff like that. TCL showed their new line of phones and tablets, which looked pretty good on the Android side. And then some of these startups. There's one. It's actually, it looks like a piece of wood you like trim on your house. But then, of course, it's got a full touchability to it. You can even write on it. So if I write sleep, then I can actually have all the lights in the house turned down to sleep mode. It's pretty cool. So I'll have a lot of videos over on my channel with everything that I saw.
Cool. We'll have to go check that out. All right. Next question.
Guy Cochran from Seattle, USA. What would you recommend for a photographer friend wanting to capture a 2-person Zoom call in the best quality? HDMI out, screen scrape, Room NDI, ZoomISO, or something else. 1080p is enabled on account for edit.
Jonas.
I would do 2 things at least to have a primary and a backup record. We always, even if we use Room's NDI, which would be my preferred method, we always still record on Zoom. That way, if there's an issue or a hiccup, we have editors that are capable of fixing that. And what I would do is Room NDI in the cloud ideally, because then you have just a stable bandwidth that you could get into a vMix system that can deal with the changing bandwidth, and then either out to a live mic, to 2x live mic recorders, or using the ISO recorder.
Alex?
Yeah, we mostly do screen scrape to a hyperdeck, which is what we're what we're normally doing when we record those. For the highest quality, I would recommend also researching local records. So, Riverside FM is an example of something that will record locally to them, so that if you have any kind of breakup, usually it can do a higher quality. And I think that we will be able to show some other versions of that that aren't Riverside FM in the not too distant future that will even do higher quality than what they're doing. So local records, what we call in radio double ending, is really the best way to get the most out of what we do. Like when we do the highest quality stuff, we'll have people talk, but we literally sent them a 6K. We record internally to that, so that we can get the Blackmagic RAW back. So obviously, if they're just doing people they don't know, they can't do that. But always try to think about double ending.
All right, next question.
Mike Beardmore from Rennie, UK. How best to address union member concerns about the employment of remote technicians and perceived effects on local employees?
Alex.
I think that the best way for that to happen, for people to approach that, is to figure out how they get to be part of that, that system, because it is an issue. I mean, a lot of times we built up whole teams because we just, it was the cost benefit analysis was way too high. We built whole teams offsite to do all the graphics and do all the other bits and pieces, because putting them on site, because of time constraints and the meal penalties and everything else, it was something that had to be done. So I think that the local unions and local locations really have to think about not how to stop it, because it's not stoppable. It's really how to become part of that process and how to, make sure that they're building up skill sets that allow them to be part of a virtual production pipeline, as opposed to, there's not going to be, at this point, the way remote work is pushing, if they push too hard to stop it, I think that they'll just end up having those locations and go somewhere else, because the largest audiences are going to be online. It won't matter where people do the events for much longer, and that's going to be a challenge, for folks that are trying to figure out how they remain in the mix. The best thing to do is to be retraining.
Rupert?
Almost exactly that. In trying to address the concerns of these groups, it's a bit like offering, wisdom or advice or counsel. You have to counsel them that towards maybe the training resources they need, and counsel them in the mindset of needing to stay competitive in a wider competitive landscape.
All right, next question.
Next question comes from Kent King in Charlotte, North Carolina, USA. After hours, great focus on perception of constructive criticism versus portfolio work. Love the office hour term ruthless reviews, but maybe like Andy L. said, needs a tagline to explain for new members that it is constructive, plus an office hour showcase with optional critique.
Roscoe.
Yeah, I was here for listening to that. And I guess the thing is, we want to be this welcoming environment. And so there was kind of the sense that the word ruthless had a negative connotation. My pushback on that is but they can watch. They don't have to participate. They can just watch and see how people are going through that procedure. And then they can just choose whether or not they want to join in.
TJ?
Yeah, it actually was a fantastic discussion. Language was part of the discussion. What do certain words mean and how are they perceived by people? The underlying sentiment was that we don't really want to lose the ruthless part of the review that we do for one another, because we are going to pick at every single flaw that we see, because that is really the only way to improve. By saying good enough is not actually just good enough.
Alex?
Yeah, the ruthless is a pretty carefully chosen word, and it's there to kind of unleash people to say what needs to be said. I think that the goal is to say that it's okay to say everything that you see is wrong. I think that the problem we get into, of course, you need to be constructive in the sense that you're not ad hominem attacks or other things that are going to, that are sarcastic and all those things. That's what really creates a non-constructive environment. But picking at things that aren't working and picking at what you see as not working is incredibly important for anybody to improve their craft. And people do not help other people by not giving them that, it's just a matter of how you deliver it and admittedly building a culture where people are ready to be critiqued. I think a lot of times we have this situation where people, especially in today's world, people are not ready to be told what's not working, and they're not ready to hear what's missing, and it holds them back. Like, it literally holds them back from being successful. Whereas if the folks that are very successful, a lot of times come up in a cauldron of, if you look at Pixar, they're notorious for, how they break down scenes and processes and everything else internally. Because they're looking, all they care about is the best product coming out the other end. And if you really care about that, you're ready to hear it. And if people aren't ready to hear it, they shouldn't put it out in front of people. When we say ruthless reviews, we don't say ruthless reviews all the time. we say, you can say, how am I doing? But if you say, give me a ruthless review of the thing that I'm doing, that is telling people there's no limit to what you can say as far as, is within the level of being constructive and not sarcastic and not attacking. There's no, you can pick at the little cables, the messy cables behind me, whatever those things are, you can pick at every little thing. And I'm telling you that that's okay. If I say I want a ruthless review, if I say how am I looking, then the answer from me is usually, you look good. like that's if someone doesn't give me the permission to be ruthless, I generally won't be. So I think that's the thing, is that giving people a word that says I'm ready for a full review is I think an important piece of the languaging.
Kenneth?
Well, of course, the boss said it all. And if I had no tact at all, I would say, if you don't want to know, don't show. But understand that we're not mean. We're not nasty. We're just going to tell you what's wrong. And that's why I've never showed up for a ruthless review. I don't want to know quite yet. However, there is after hours, which is a fine place to show up and say, how am I doing? What should I do? Is this okay or not? Or what should we do? When you want to be ruthlessly reviewed, and it's alliterative for a purpose, there's a place for that. Welcome. We're not mean.
Sky?
Yeah, I also love the automatopoeia of it. And now, Emily, could you say the word? Say that phrase for me.
What, ruthless review?
See, it just sounds different coming from you. But at the same time, it's taken us over 6 minutes to explain what it means. And so those words, I believe, are very accurate. And so again, to Kenneth's point, I want to know how to get better. I want to know, and to, again, Kenneth's point, he's choosing when to ask questions of others. Do I have broccoli in my teeth? You may want to know that. So those kind of the concepts, but it's a very valuable process. And again, it's taken us 6 minutes to explain a 2-word concept.
Mark?
Well, having gone to architecture school, which is based on ruthless reviews called crits, you stand up and defend your design in front of professionals, and they tend to rip you apart as a washout system. I think the ruthless reviews here are very nice. They're done professionally. No one's out to really attack anyone. They're just out to point out how to make yourself appear better. And look at the backgrounds here. Look at how everybody's set up. It's increased so much over the past year. And I think ruthless review as a term just allows people to know that they're going to get the full criticism.
Alex?
And as a note, we're probably moving most ruthless reviews to after hours. And so for those of you who want those, there'll probably be rounds of that we'll start to schedule once a month, but they won't be something that we broadcast, just because the broadcast schedule is about to become very tight. So that's probably where they'll end up.
And Rupert?
Just make the point also that sometimes we have folks drop into after hours, either sometimes regulars or sometimes newcomers, specifically asking for a ruthless review. That's what they are looking for. And I think some of the discussion yesterday spawned out of maybe this serving a different purpose, also maybe a place for people to submit pieces of work for just general review, and that might end up being something different. I think the important part about the ruthless part is sometimes time is of the essence. Just like we were saying, sometimes somebody may excuse me, change their setup, or they may have an event coming up, and they may come in and say, hey, look, I need a ruthless review, and I need you to be honest, because this is important. I don't want you to hold back. Don't not tell me there's something wrong, because I need to know. So there's an element, I think, of that in the ruthless review, that it is actually important that you give honest, true feedback, because it might be have a pivotal and important dependency.
Yeah, I actually listened to that yesterday. Like, for some reason, I was in after hours, like had it in playing while I was working. And that whole conversation went on for almost 2 hours. And it had started because someone wanted to show work without getting feedback. And then someone made the point or asked the question, like, if you're going to show it and don't want feedback, then why are you showing it? And I thought that was really interesting, because yes, you have to create a place of trust in order to receive feedback. Like it has to be like, I trust these people to give me good feedback. But I thought it was interesting that this person was pressing that they wanted a place to show something, but they didn't want anyone in this group to say anything about it. And I was like, you're in the wrong place. We don't have a channel for that. That's not what we do. And then if criticism is going to be criticism, it has to be constructive. It can't just be, like Alex said, negative just to be negative, or sarcastic to be sarcastic. So I think we do a really good job of that. But I can see how new people can be a little sketched out by it, but I think if you hang out in the background and wait for it, you'll understand. All right, next question.
It comes from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. What is the least expensive NDI camera?
Jonas.
I would say the camera you own. That could be either a phone with an NDI app, or it could be a webcam. It could be your old DSLR that you can hack with some firmware to your PC or to even your old PC, and then use the webcam to utility from UTech, and then you have an NDI source.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not really a camera, but it's a addition to the camera. Like, for instance, I could get my Hero 4, and I've done this hooked up to one of these boxes and go from there. You have the NDI Spark, which runs around $500 or better, which you can then put in any camera in and control it that way. And then you could take an old computer, as Jonas said, like an Intel NIC or something like that, anything with an i5 or better processor, Sandy Bridge processor, and decent graphics in there, of course. That's what you're going to need for that. But then I guess Bird Dog also is making this right here, which is the Bird Dog Play, $150, and it goes up to 4K 30 content. I haven't tried it out myself, so I'm not sure how well it works, but that's going to be probably my next purchase in the NDI realm for me.
All right, next question.
Here's Douglas Carmichael with a question. Which smart TV brand would you recommend for the best balance of features, developer flexibility, and image quality? I've heard Sony uses Android on their smart TVs.
Mitchell?
They do. They do use it. Unfortunately, I don't like all that smart stuff. I like the old style, plug in the HDMI and the picture is made. All these little buttons and configuries, or clickety-clicks, I think as Alex calls them, they annoy the heck out of me.
Alex?
I think that there's actually, within the next two CESs or the next 2 years, we're going to see a push towards TVs that are featureless. I think that is actually the next step for these TVs, is that the OTT boxes have become successful to a point that that a lot of people don't want the features. They don't want to be tracked. They don't want the extra color features. They just want what goes in, what goes out. I think that as far as TVs, as far as color rendition and quality, I think the LGs are probably the highest, followed closely by the Sonys. But I agree with Mitchell that I'm hoping to see TVs without any features at all. No Android, no nothing. Just I have a signal coming in. I'm going to put a signal on the screen. I know the TV manufacturers went down this path, but I think that there's going to be a new set of TVs coming out that are not don't have anything.
Rupert?
Yeah, the smarter a TV is, the more it communicates with the cloud. So I would just recommend checking the privacy policy of whatever manufacturer you're buying.
All right, next question.
And it's coming to us from Douglas Carmichael. I've heard that vMix operators are getting a lot of work. Would vMix be the tool to know for remote cloud-based event production? Or would others, mimoLive, also be marketable?
Jonas?
I would definitely say vMix owns that market right now, especially the sub $50,000 project market is basically owned by vMix right now in the cloud. It is a skill that has been requested highly lately. One of the interesting things is that it starts to shift to not only searching for operators who get a template file in our case and then operate on that, but also to people that can create those systems, that can create a good vMix file. But it's also started that normal TDs that don't even know anything about the cloud start to roll in for our productions. The TD never sees vMix. They just get a multi-view, a bunch of buttons, and then press the buttons how they want it and never notice that it's vMix in the background. And that is the step where the industry is also moving to have more interfaces that lay on top of vMix and not only give you access to the vMix. So as an operator that is highly demanded right now, the demand might go down, but for vMix engineers, that will definitely stay for a while.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I totally agree on that. As for the other software, of course, everybody knows that I use Wirecast a lot, but I do have vMix as well, and I've been working back and forth. A lot of companies that really don't care what you're using for the back end software. As long as it works, then you get some jobs off of that. And then there are some situations where there's a mixed environment, that one piece of software does what the other piece of software doesn't, or you need to do the conversion from Mac to PC, or Mac to the PC in the cloud, AWS or something like that. Then some of those operators with whatever software they're using works really well.
All right, next question.
And it comes to us from Christian Pryor-Mamulin from Wolfsburg, Germany. Any experience in the panel how to use DaVinci Resolve for audio recording and the
mask? When you registered, they actually gave you 2 tests, and they expected you to take a test before you even walked down to the show floor, and go from there. So they were very diligent on that. There were mask enforcers at the event that would walk around and tell people to put their masks on if they weren't doing that, and then a lot of the buses and things like that, they were very diligent. But the other thing that was interesting was only MGM properties got shuttles to the convention center and the Venetian. If you were staying at a different hotel, you had to find alternate transportation. So with all that, and I think there was no real after parties. So a lot of people pretty much went back to their hotel rooms and stayed apart so they could at least cover the whole event.
Rupert?
And of course, CES did include a digital component too. There was a virtual section to it. There was actually an interesting panel discussion called How Technology Flipped the Customer Experience. And there's some interesting CIOs and CMOs on that panel talking about how things have changed and are changing. So some of the digital content may be worth taking a look at also.
Alex?
I think the thing that didn't work was that there wasn't a huge uptick for the companies that released during CES versus the companies that released before or around the same time frame. I know that a couple of people that I've talked to have noticed that they're not clear. The big thing that a lot of folks are starting to look at is, are these conventions, getting them the kind of press? The whole marketplace has changed. No one knows. How you get the word out, where it goes, the type of broadcasts, all those things. And it's just, everyone's really trying to rethink that process. When you see E3 actually cancel for June, I think what we're about to witness is a big pivot, for them, for E3. They're not going to get rid of their in-person. I think they'll still have that, but I think that they want to give their vendors enough time to build great online experiences. And I think that definitely E3 is going to go towards an online experience, and I think that we're probably going to see that as a trend. And I think that many of us that have gone to all these conferences for the last 25 years, the size of the booths have gotten out of hand. It's a lot of walking, and you go, I really wish I could just go to Showstoppers, or to me, the CES Unveiled and Showstoppers is the right size for booths. And I think that we may end up with that more, and where the online event becomes the big thing, and the in-person event becomes much smaller.
All right, next question.
George Butters from Halifax. Is the XLR audio connector on life support, or is it here to stay? Why do you think so?
Alex?
I'm assuming that this is in kind of reference to using things that are like digital pipelines and Dante and so on and so forth to move things around. I would say that the XLR still got some legs because there is a lot of convenience to it. In short runs, complex runs, things you need to change quickly, there's a lot of place for XLRs still. We use them sometimes just to fix the clocking issues that we get between things. So, rather than trying to figure out how 2 computer systems on MIDI or Dante talk to each other, we just bridge them with XLR, so that it can ignore all the needs for resyncing. So I still think that there's it's probably not used as much as it used to be. We don't run XLRs in long runs anymore, but I think that it's still going to be around for a while.
Mitchell?
Yeah, please keep your hands off my Nutrix XLR connectors. They're very tactile, very nice. They even smell good. So please don't change those.
All right, next question. Oh, you're muted.
Emily
Give me-
Russo from Nashville, Tennessee, asked the question, anyone know if there is a way to get to the new Google Sites API? I want to set a time limit for access.
And nobody raised their hand, so I don't know if anyone's going to be able to help me.
Can you explain what the issue is?
So they have the ability, so one of my clients wants us to make a website, a Google site. It has to be a Google site, but only available for 3 years. And then at the end of 3 years, they want it to just turn off. So you can set a time limit access on Google, but it only lets you go 1 year forward, even though it shows multiple years. So I was wondering if there was a way I could hack into the code and change it myself. But they haven't released the new API. Like I could do it on old Google sites and I could write a script for it, but the new one I can't. And I didn't know if anyone had any hacks or tricks. So
John has his hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you how to do it through the Google API, although I'll try to do some research and get back to you, Emily. But the way I would do it is to set a calendar reminder to delete the site in 3 years. I know that's not the way you wanted to hear right now, but that's the solution I have to offer for you. The other way is to have a DNS record that's set to expire in 3 years and only let people access it through the DNS record. Don't use the local record.
yeah, that's actually DNS record. Jonas?
I tried to find a new API in the developer console because I have access to quite a few APIs in there. They don't even have the invitation open yet, so
They said it was going to be ready by the end of 2021, and then they've been silent on it since that announcement. So, and I was like searching for alternate ways to get in the back end, and really, I'm not that good at it. Like I know how to, just enough to be dangerous to myself. Because it's a client, I don't want to. I gave them that option. I was like, we're going to just set a calendar reminder. That was my first suggestion, because I was just like, there's no, guarantee that even if I do mess around in the back end, that I won't break it instead of making it do what I want it to do. Rupert?
If you can set the date for a year, maybe you can just do that periodically during the course of 3 years. Set it now for a year, set a calendar reminder for 6 months from now to extend it for a year, and then make it an annual thing, and then you can let the final cycle expire, maybe as a fail safe. If you are doing any kind of if you can do any coding in the web page itself, maybe you can just do a catch there. If when the page loads, and check the date, if the date equals beyond X when the page loads, it doesn't load.
That's a good idea. It's funny because I'm like, what happens if I don't stay for 3 years? Like, who's going to remember to turn it off? That's like the only thing that I'm worried about with the whole calendar reminder thing. John?
Yeah, to answer your question on that, don't set up the reminder for your calendar, set it up for a team calendar so that you're not a single point of failure. I have to deal with that a lot with vendors. And so, for instance, anything that I have coming in from a vendor doesn't go to my mailbox. It either goes to a distribution list, which hits everybody on my team, or it goes to a product-specific inbox that we periodically monitor. I'm not saying we monitor it daily, but at least once a week we check it.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Next question.
Our man Douglas Carmichael wants to know, Apple engineering director Jeff Wilcox, who led the Apple Silicon transition, went back to Intel. Do you think this was a setback for the future of the Mac platform?
TJ.
Jeff is one of many thousands of people reportedly working on Apple Silicon, and they're all very smart. If it were Johnny Sarugi that left, I would be a bit more concerned, but I am not entirely concerned that the Mac is going to be hurt by the loss of one individual.
Alex?
Yeah, a couple things. One is that you have to remember that the chips take years, 4 to 5 years to develop. So whatever he worked on is still coming for the next, arriving for the next 4 to 5 years. So the whatever it is, M3, M4, M5 are probably stuff that he already worked on and worked on those designs. A lot of designers like him like to work on things that are challenging. And I imagine by the time Apple gets to that, by the time his design team has gotten to those chips out there, it's probably much more of a oh, now we're just doing what we're doing. Like there's a set trajectory, whereas the M1, M2, M3, M4 probably are exciting, for him. Intel now is in trouble. I mean, like we're all clear that their house is on fire, and so he gets to have a new opportunity where he probably gets paid an incredible amount of money to move over, knowing what he knows. And I mean, I'm sure that Intel, if he left Apple, Intel pushed millions and millions of dollars to him to move, as well as he gets a big challenge for the next 4 or 5 years. He's integral to that team to help take what he knew. So I don't think it hurts Apple at all.
And Jeffrey.
I don't know if Intel's in trouble by any means, but with
they do.
With the
they think they're in trouble.
With the M1 chip, and of course Qualcomm buying Nuvia, there is definitely competition in the new chip space, and AMD and Intel are looking into it. So it does make sense that Intel is going to arm themselves, no pun intended, with some people that have a good knowledge of how the Atom chip works and figure out how they can bring their chips into the next generation and compete with that. And but as for Intel, you have so many different types of chips, so many different types of computers out there that I think there's going to be a space for everybody in the market.
I mean, a lot of the internal stuff they're panicking. That's the internal communications is the word most applicable is panic. So they think they're in trouble. Whether we think they're in trouble or not, I don't know.
All right, next question.
Craig McFarlane from Boston wants to know, what internet speed test is your go-to for upload and jitter aspects?
Alex.
For an individual, I'm assuming this is for Google or not, Hangouts or Zoom or whatever. Our standard has been 10 megs up with a jitter of less than 30. Like that's our target for what we want to see when someone does a speed test or whatever. So that's for an individual. Generally, we take the bandwidth that's required for it and try to near double it. 10 has been an even thing for us to do because a lot of things sat at 5 or 6 megs. Now at 1080p, I believe that Zoom is using 6.25 megs. I believe, I don't know if that may have changed recently, but that's what it has taken. So typically we would say, well, 12.5 is really what we want. We want twice the headroom. And so if we have more people connecting, we take those numbers, we add them up, and then we multiply them by 2. And that's what we're trying to get to make sure that we have plenty of headroom. Now, at some point, as you get to 10, 20 people, you start going down to 50% headroom. But you want to have that kind of headroom because the fluctuations of your connection and everything else, you don't want to get anywhere near the connection that you need.
All right, Rupert.
In terms of these speed tests sites that you can use, of the services, they will always try to connect you with the nearest server to you, the nearest speed test node, to test your connection. That may not always be the most helpful set of data to estimate what how your connection is going to perform to a service that you're using. If you're wanting to connect to Zoom or something like that, you will really the most important thing is to try and pick a speed test server closest to the location that you're connecting to. We've seen this problem with some folks in different countries when they're using Zoom. Turns out that their Zoom client isn't actually going to be talking to Zoom servers in their local region. It's going to be talking to servers in a different region. So in that case, the best type of test to do using speed test would be to select a server there in the same region as the Zoom servers that you're connecting to, for example, so that you're getting a real world, as close as to real world test of the actual pipeline that you're going to be using for your your service or your event or whatever it is that you're using.
Jonas?
One of the ones that I really like is the one from Cloudflare, because they do it to the nearest edge. If this is better than what they normally get, I can reroute my traffic through the edge, and it does a couple of measurements, not only one, and does it for different upload tests and does continually it. That way we can detect if it's just spikes, and we let them run multiple times a day. So that way we get a pretty good picture. And we are rerouting a lot of the traffic through private backbones from AWS, from Cloudflare, we find issues.
TJ?
I like speedtest.net. They tend to be a bit conservative on their speed reporting.
All right. Next question.
And it comes from Christian Prior Mamulan of Wolfsburg, Germany. Would it be possible to have a bigger text entry field in Mukana to type the questions into? It seems like cannot have a bigger than 4 lines length.
TJ?
There's a specific limit on the number of characters in a question for a reason. Making you be brief on your question gets you to have to think hard about what that question, the essence of what you are trying to ask, to allow us to answer a lot more questions.
Precise and concise. Alex?
Yeah, basically what TG said. I mean, the reason that the size is there is to limit the number of words people use for the questions. In the past, we've had lots of different ways of doing this, where people sent us longer questions, and we just didn't find that it improved the questions. It just made it harder for us to read them out. So this is really built for the show. Is the length, the question length is built so that it's good for the show.
Rupert?
Yeah, so the length of the question in terms of characters is limited, but if the physical size of the box, on your screen real estate doesn't suit your use case, you can always, type out your question in a different application, in a notepad or notes or anything, and then paste it in.
All right, next question.
Christian is back with another question. On the Discord server, we spoke about the Youlean Loudness Meter by Julijan Nikolic. Would it be also a great guest for a second hour?
Roscoe?
I'd love to have him for a second hour. I don't know how long we could discuss Youlean specifically, but we can take any guest and stretch out their knowledge base and find out exactly what he knows. So, I mean, that'd be great. And I'd love to give him a chance because I found a memory leak that I attributed to Youlean in Audio Hijack using the Youlean plugin. I love the meters. I love the price point of the meters being free and all that. So I'd love to give him a chance to come in and say, no, the issue is here or whatever.
Jonas?
Just wanted to say something to the memory leak real quick, because that's an issue we had for a long time. And then at one time, one of my colleagues said, so how do you think he can store the data from the last 24 hours of how loud something was without a memory leak? And then everybody in the room was like, oh yeah, well, that's true. So it's a feature, not a bug.
All right, next question.
Jacob Goodnight from Indianapolis, Indiana. Jonas, what is the recommended way to get audio out of the PlayoutBee besides embedded via HDMI? The built-in jacks are very noisy. Should I use a USB audio interface?
Jonas?
Yeah, so if you're talking about the Raspberry Pi, the built-in jacks are horrible. You can either use a USB audio interface, or there are special boards you can add to your Raspberry Pi. We're working on some alternative ways as well to get streamed data out of it. But yeah, either embed it or use an external USB capture device, or sometimes there's a head for the Pi.
All right, next question.
Mike Beardmore from Reading, UK has the question, how are external vocal disruptors to live audio broadcast handled in the experience of the panelist?
Alex?
So we're assuming that people yelling is the thing that's referring to. Generally, we usually manage that in a couple of different ways. One is a mic with high off-axis rejection, like an SM58, will generally not pick up a ton around someone. The second thing is that we generally try to find places, especially for stand-ups, where we can have some control, where the access is a little bit limited, so that we can kind of control how close someone is. Once someone's more than 10 feet away on an SM58, you really can't hear them. So that becomes, so it doesn't, you don't have to control it that much to push that out. And then we also use human barriers. So like when we used to cover CES and NAB, we literally went with a team. So there'd be a person on the camera, the host who's asking questions, and 4 or 5 people that would just build a bubble around them. They just quietly just build a bubble around them that would just be standing there, but wouldn't let you through, and so you had to go around, and we made it look we made it first look uncomfortable, but if you tried to cut through, we would literally not let you through. So that was a 5 or 6 person team that would just bubble through CES and NAB. And that was primarily to control people crossing frame, people going behind frame, external audio. And it was, very effective to make that work. So, and then finally, where a lot of people go is to use, if you're doing it on a major event, you make sure that the people doing the stand-ups are in a private location, not a publicly owned location, because that allows you to add contracted security. So that, so once you have that, you can usually sort out disruptors pretty quickly.
All right, next question.
Panelist Josh Kaufman from Pittsburgh, PA. How do you use Trello for project management? What Power UPS add-ons do you find useful? Are there any premium features that would be helpful for larger, multifaceted projects?
Rupert.
I do see Trello used in the wild. I've never seen it used as a holistic project management tool. More likely, I see it and encounter it as a add-on, perhaps complementary tool to other tools and other processes. My personal experience is that I've actually seen it cause more problems in project management than solutions for a few reasons. Quite often, you'll find teams using it in an unsanctioned manner. It isn't part of the official project management process, yet some folks have taken it upon themselves to build a Trello thing, and then it becomes then it kind of breaks down your project management, because you've got one set of people doing one thing in a certain way or using a certain tool, and then the permissions can fall apart. If they've set it up that way, then somebody else owns it. Somebody else is managing the permissions, or perhaps not. You're getting data in the wrong place. So I just haven't seen a lot of success with Trello, to be honest with you.
Sky?
I'm laughing because this is the tool that's been offered to the OH Space Project initiative as a final place for us to at least have a one page. And Josh has accepted that from Ash. Again, all of our volunteer, crew people and production people, we're just trying to find a tool that we can all have on, that one page to look at. So this was the tool that was offered, and Ash is prepared as a project manager to, at least within the production side of things, to manage that. And Josh is ready to push it forward. So I think this is the ask of, how does this tool fit into a project management system?
Nick.
I was just going to say, if you're looking for something that's a bit of a free form collaborative place, a lot of folks in my design college have really gravitated towards using Miro, which is essentially a web-based whiteboard that's infinite in dimension, and you can put on things that look like Post-it notes, and then they can have, or you can connect links to files, and so it is just just imagine a really big whiteboard and being able to go into a physical room and kind of collaborate on things. So I don't use Trello. I've seen it a few times. It didn't click with me, and so it was not something that I ended up gravitating to. So if and not to downplay it at all, I mean, I'm sure if there was a project that you have to use Trello, I would figure out how to use it. But I've just noticed that a lot of folks in my design college that are working on these styles of projects have really been gravitating to Miro, and it seems to click with a lot of people in terms of intuitiveness and all. So just thought I'd throw that into the conversation.
All right, let's keep the questions moving, because we're running out of time for our educators before our educators show up. So
John Hewitt from Huntersville, North Carolina wants to know recommendations for a mic to use with a Canon 5D MK4 or Blackmagic Design 6K Pro. Looking for one I can move back and forth.
Roscoe.
I'd start with the Rode Go. I'll go to the Rode. Rode, either the Go it has a lot of versatility. It's a little wireless mic that you can actually plug another 3.5 millimeter in. To move back and forth, you're going to have to get to the 3.5 millimeter. That's only that's the only audio input on that Canon. So Rode Go, but then beyond that, Rode has a little short shotguns. Rode has a product line of 3.5 millimeter. After that, you have to look at, I use the Beach Tech boxes myself. You can plug in a nice XLR. They're a little passive. The signals come in a little bit low, but Juice makes some powered boxes, that kind of stuff. So I'll stop there.
Stefan?
Nothing more to add.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that you want to think less about the mic and more about the interface. So what I use for all of the cameras is a Mix Pre 3, because you can take the 1/8 inch jack out of that Mix Pre 3 and then feed it in with a little bit of testing and tone. You can get it to be just the right amount for that camera, and you'll get the best. And then you have, that's how we get into the 6Ks. Now, I admit the other thing is that we generally record on the Mix Pre 3 and then feed into the camera. So the camera, we can use the audio because we make sure that it's nice and clean, but we don't have to. But we, this way we have a 32-bit float recording of what happened, and then we have going into the camera something that oftentimes we will use, but we're not. But if something happened or something didn't work, we can always go back to the source.
All right, next question.
And the next question comes from my very good friend, Sky Gleason from Seattle, Washington. And he wants to know from Nick Jushchyshyn, how could a virtual set work with the Office Hour Space Initiative production leading up to the March 19th rocket launch?
Nick?
So I'm a little bit new to a lot of these terms. Sky, I didn't know if you want to elaborate on that question or if you just want me to.
Jeff Keithley has offered up the virtual set opportunity. And so basically I'm asking, hey, you want to come play in another project?
Oh, well, the answer to that's always going to be yes. So, but
it's recorded.
It's one of those things where I would say that, getting folks up to speed on using something, like getting started, takes less than a week in terms of just playing around with things. But planning a professional implementation of one of those stages takes about the amount of time that you have. So it should be something that gets started soon.
Alex?
I have full confidence in Nick's ability to build a very good virtual set. The only thing I'll say is be super careful about the key. So when we talk about virtual sets, we talk about the key. It's really hard to do it well. And if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it. Like in my opinion, like if you can't crush the key, every little hair, every little wisp, all the little bits and pieces of whoever is in front of that, don't go down that path. Like you have such a great production going forward. There's no reason to, cheapen it by having a bad key. So that's the thing that I would focus on. I think that the building the set and the digital stuff is easy. Getting a good key is like, if you're not using an Ultimat for a live one, there's nothing else I would use. Like let's be clear, like I would not use anything less than an Ultimat on a broadcast, on a big broadcast that I was trying to make everything perfect. Just because, and I would do it in 4K going down to 1080p. I would use everything that I had to have a good key, or I wouldn't put it into the broadcast.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
one note I would add,
if
I can add just one note, is that you don't necessarily need to use keying.
Yeah.
So I'm using keying right now, right? And so here's, every once in a while someone asks, what does it really look like?
And Nick has the advantage that he's follically airrodynamic. So
that's right. I am follically challenged. I have so many.
No, not challenged.
Aerodynamic.
You're efficient.
That's right. Yeah, not much of a hair sim going on up there.
Right.
And my green screen's not the best. In a Ruthless review, my green screen would be ripped to shreds. But I am using that to key right now, but I don't have to, right? So I've got my holographic screens, and I could pull this camera back a little bit if I wanted to. Let me just do that real quick. So you can see a little bit more of this scene. But the really cool thing is I could just switch off the lights for my green screen, which means there's nothing left to key. And I still have my holographic screens. There is no keying going on. I could have a real background behind me that doesn't key, but I could still take advantage of kind of this, Menard report kind of functionality, and I could have foreground things being added.
And also, if you're not tracking, you could use a screen, and the screen will key perfectly. So we're not in keying, but if you put a big 75-inch screen behind somebody, you can get it to match up as well.
Yep.
All right.
We'll be talking.
Next question.
Here we go. Scott Mueller of Germantown, New York. I'm getting dropouts and black flashes from my ZoomISO sends in vMix. What can remedy this?
Jeffrey.
That is a tall order. There is a lot of things to go through, but I'm going to be very quick about it. First of all, check your network, possibly reset your network. Are you using NDI or NDI-HX when you're sending things out? And what else are you sending through your network? Run a network diagnostic on there. You can also check it in Studio Monitor, and Siena's got that multi-monitor software that works really well, so you can actually see if you're also getting the dropouts on that end before it's even going into vMix. When you're in vMix, what's your resolutions coming in and out? Are you bringing in audio and video through NDI? And how are you going to what you need to do to bring that in there? And of course, update everything to make sure you're on the most current version of NDI and vMix as well. And then Ethernet settings, like for instance, Intel has this option that does awake on LAN and sleep on LAN, and those are things that I like to turn off on the computer just so they don't get in the way. So check the settings if you've did any updates on your Ethernet. Other than that, clean up your system, possibly do some reinstalls, and if anything, just completely bypass the NDI and just do a direct connect into the computer through like capture cards and see if that resolves the problem there.
All right, next question.
And it comes from Matt Cool in Montreal, Quebec. A friend of mine has bought a massive amount of fiber optic cable from an auction. It is meant for indoor use as it doesn't have a robust outer jacket. He's looking to sell it and is looking for a good place to advertise it. Any ideas?
Alex.
I mean, I think that eBay is probably going to be the best place for you to repost that if it's in good condition. But also ping me in Discord and tell me what kind of condition, how many strands, and how long it is. I may know some people that need that a lot of fiber that would be running through a facility. So yeah, definitely ping me. But I think eBay otherwise is probably your best bet.
I know a guy. All right.
I know a guy that looks a lot like me.
All right, next question.
A. Mitchells of Washington wants to know, is it possible to go into the session on Keynote right after the first hour's Q&A session so the YouTube can just continue straight through without closing and restarting? Then the members-only portion of the education hours can be after that.
I guess it's a little late for that, but Roscoe?
I'm not sure we can get the educators in at 6 a.m. So the thing that we've allowed is that the educators can come in a little bit late. So they'd obviously have to come in early just to catch the keynote. And because we do have this moment where we allow the educators in. So I'll pass it to Alex.
Yeah. All I want to say is that we need to talk to the educators about it. I've thought about that it would be easier to run straight through and then let them be part of that. And the only reason that I haven't done that is because I haven't had the opportunity to talk to the educators about what they want to do.
All right, next question.
And it comes to us from Junior Grant in New York. Is there a wired in-ear monitor with a microphone that can be used for office hours and Zoom?
Alex?
Yeah, DPA makes one. It is it looks like they're I'm just looking. I just realized I didn't pull it up quickly, but it looks like the other DPAs that they have, but it has an in-ear monitor, and you can have it go into one ear or both ears. So those are the options there. I'm just looking for the actual piece as I talk through it. It's the 4560 binaural headset microphone. So that is that's one of them. That's a binaural microphone. Sorry. There's another one that is in ear, and I'm just trying to find it here. But anyway, so what you're looking for is DPA. They're the only ones that I know that make. It's not the binaural microphone. I apologize. It is the. I didn't answer this question very well, but DPA makes one. It's got a headset that goes down. It's got earpieces that go in. It's somewhere on their site, and when you click on earpiece microphone, you get binaural instead of the headset mic that I was looking for. So anyway, yeah, look at DPA.
All right, and the last question for first hour.
And it comes from Michael Andreas, Olathe, Kansas. And he wants to know, at the start of today's show, 21 panelists were visible, but the Zoom window reported 29 panelists. Besides Chad, who are the other hidden panelists?
Ooh, if we had to tell you, then we have to not, disappear you. So, TJ.
Those non-visible panelists are all of the Zoom OSC and Zoom ISO rooms that are used to create the Office Hours 2.0 broadcast.
Yay, we did it. We made it through our first hour for the Saturday morning, and we're going to leave YouTube. So if you are on YouTube, you're going to want to make sure that you get into Zoom, because we're turning the YouTube off by YouTube. And then if you're an educator, you should be raising your hand, and we're going to pull you guys in to
John, you need to cut it before.